Basically, I was looking at these wires. I started taping up the horn wires, and I'm like, you know what? They're so frayed. You can see the wire. I mean, I'm not using any of this wire for the most part. Obviously, the lights for the rear lights are gonna be fine. This is where I cut it off from the horn. So there's 3 wires here. One is obviously going to the horn, and one is the power in that apparently was a problem. So somebody ran an outside wire, so I'm not going to use that one. There's only one that's probably going to the brake lights in the rear. So that's the only one I'm going to use out of that. I'll peel it back if I have to. I probably will. This is the original wires for the horn relay. You can tell they're all frayed. They're basically all disconnected because the main one there goes to the main wire in this harness, which I'm not using, but so it didn't get powered up. I disconnected it from the amp meter gauge, and that'll be taped up. Not that it'll do anything, but I got this Cole Hersey, and I made sure I bought the Cole Hersey one because I bought cheap ones and they didn't work, and it really wasn't that much more money. Like I said, and these are the wires for the regulator. They're all frayed. So I cut the wires off right here for the old generator. Then you got one wire that also ended up it goes all in line with the horn relay wire that goes to the main wire that feeds the back of the amp meter. It's all been disconnected, so it doesn't matter really where they go. I'm not sure I want to cut them off completely like I did with the generator, but it's no big deal. So basically, I put the big wire right here going from, it's going to be a separate wire going from the battery to the starter, and this one comes from the starter. I routed it all around, and then I put an 8-gauge wire going to the back of the alternator. That's really all I need. Even though the wire would fit, it was and everything, and I really wanted to use this as a hub for everything that's going to come on. So this one here has two turn on points here. You could turn it on with negative or positive. So I have this one grounded all the time, and this one's going to turn on with the ignition key. And then when you crank it, I have it going because I took out the horn relay and I used the original bolt holes to power 2 relays. One I put for the horn, which I've heard a lot of people say, and I'm telling you, my horns were so loud when I put them on 12 volts. I barely touched the steering wheel, and it was so loud. It was awesome. But just to back off it a little bit, I only have 14-gauge wire here, and I've had this experience with a lot of old cars that don't actually have relays, such as my 65 Ford Thunderbird. I put in a relay. I put 10 amp 10-gauge wire, and man, that thing blows hard. And originally it wasn't doing anything because there was no relay. It was actually the wire in the column was completing the circuit, which made it barely blow anything. So I used that circuit instead to turn on a relay, and then bam, it turned on. 14-gauge wire is all you need, especially using 12 volts. So it's probably going to be just as loud as it was. It's either going to be really loud or it's just going to be just as like where it was, because now I'm using a lot less amperage compared to those big fat wires that were here. It's just unnecessary. And I have the relay going through it. It's all hooked up. So that's on all the time, so it'll always work. And I can't test it now because I don't actually have the wires hooked up in the car, and I don't have the battery in the car. So this side, this is the main power in. So this is anything that I want with the power on all the time is where I'm going to hook this up to, and this is with the key on. So literally everything with the key on can go there. I'm also going to have an 8-gauge wire go in the car that's going to hook up the wires in the car, and I'm probably going to put a little fuse box that they sell at AutoZone for like 13 bucks. I think I have it over here. Somehow it got messed up. Oh, by the way, this is the part number for the headlight. 84790. I don't believe this. It's so bright. I can't see anything. Shitty fucking phone. Anyway, I moved it around. So I was. Oh yeah, it's right in front of my face. Okay, so one of these guys. And I think the blade fuses will blow before the other ones, but basically, I'm probably not going to use it. I can't use it for the headlight. It's got to be for everything that's going to be switched on. And then I'm going to splice it off and go to these these guys here. I got 2 of them. I probably only need 1. This is the thing to convert to 6 volts. So one of these is going to power definitely the gas gauge, clock, and the radio. Not that any of it works. I don't know. So that's going to be teed off, and that'll be its own little circuit. Those things do 30 amps each, so it'll be plenty. And somebody else said that they had no problem using the 12-volt power through the blower motors. Obviously, when it's really cold, it's nice to have the extra spin on it. I'll be fine. I think it'll be. But I got to screw this in inside of the car somewhere. That'll be hooked up to that 8-gauge wire. And then I have the other 2 wires I have. One is going to the starter relay, so that you have to have the key on in order for the starter relay to work. So that, you know, that's fine. And then I have the other wire that's going to the ignition, and so that when the key on, you put it on the ignition. And the other one is, yeah, we got, yeah, the little guy. I don't even know if you can see it. I'm looking at where I'm looking, but I'm not looking through the phone. So the little guy is going with the ignition. This guy right here is going to the starting for the relay, and this 8-gauge wire is going to go into the car to that fuse block. And then I'm going to take the wires that came off the ignition switch, are going to go there. This wire right here is the turn-on one. That one is going in the car, and that will also have. I got my new Garmin in. I got that one, and the blue one here is going from the alternator. That's going to turn on the light, and this is going to be the crank wire, the white wire, so I can distinguish one from the other. So now I can use a very tiny crank signal to turn on this big relay. Well, that's going to turn on this relay over here, and that'll be for cranking. This one's going to be for the horn, and this is for all the time key on. You know, so this is a constant duty, 85 amp, continuous duty solenoid. Now I put a piece of aluminum here, and I use the original bolts that were in the holding the voltage regulator, and then I drilled 2 holes, and I spaced it out a little bit with another couple of bolts so it'll fit okay, so it's not bending and everything, you know. But so far so good. This came out good, and like I said, there's very little original wiring that's being used under the hood. It's relatively easy. Let's face it, there's not a lot of wiring. The light wiring, it's in pretty good shape right here. I may or may not, you know, start playing with some of these ends here to make them better. Nothing crazy. I mean, this is an old fix. I mean, they must have had these type of connectors, you know, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. You know, you got to think, because like this is old wiring, you know, but it's been repaired, unless they just fixed one little piece here. But either way, I'm probably going to redo all this, just the first section here, and I'm going to clean all this up. I got all new brass screws. And I may have to reuse the bottom one, or I may, because it was a hex for the ground, and I like that better because you make sure that it's tight. But that's going to be cleaned up, and each side is going to go into this block here. Figure that out, and then I'm going to change the switch in the floor, the high beam switch, and probably 3, 4, 5 inches of wires coming off of each connection is probably frayed on that as well. So the lighting is going to stay under the hood and everything, you know, and just this one wire going here, which turns on the brake lights. This was a wire that somebody fed to that. And again, it looks like an old repair because the original wire was there. It was just taped up. I'm not even going to bother playing with it because I'd rather feed my own wire to it. And the only thing I'll have to do is just make sure that the wire going to the back for the brake lights are good. If it's not good, I'll run a new wire front to back. Doesn't have to be that big. And then I'll get to changing all the, you know, the bulbs and everything, but that'll be a later date. Still got other little things to do, and call me crazy, but I hate to get things started until I get all this, because all this needs to be done anyway. So I think it's going to be pretty bulletproof and a very good setup to be reliable, to make hundreds of miles of travel possible. All right, it got long, but thank you for watching.